Hello folks, today I'm going to be taking a look at Mantic Games' new 2-player starter set for Firefight, their squad-based game in the Warpath universe. Alright, so taking a look then at Mantic's new Firefight 2-player starter set for the war zones of the future. A chunky big box. As you can see, in this you will get everything you need to start playing. I suppose it's a small squad level game. Dead Zone would be individual skirmish, and then Warpath is large unit level actions. But this contains Enforcers and Marauders. And you get the rulebook, 71 miniatures, all the dice, rulebooks, getting started books, tokens, so on and so forth. Also 6 Mantic points, most important thing of all. Now, I'm going to start with the paper, because I'm odd like that. First thing to take a look at, there's a little getting started booklet, little 8-page book. It does start off saying who you are, how to assemble your models. There's a mix of hard plastic, which needs poly cement, and also PVC in bags for the ripper suits, so you'll need super glue for those. What you'll need for your first games, if you've not played before, and then play through this before you get stuck into the main rules. You've got about 30 pages of rules to read, but ignore some of the harder stuff. You can layer them on later on. And it finishes off with the army lists that they suggest. 785 points per side without upgrades, which is very good for a starter set. 1,000 points to 1,500 would be your standard size games, probably on the lower side of that as well, around 1,000 points. They play out in a 4x4. When you swap over to larger than 1,500, go to a 6x4. This also contains your assembly instructions, which is something I know people have been getting at Mantic for a long time to do. So we've got our Enforcers and our Marauders. Fairly simple, color-coded bits that you can stick on here, there and everywhere. It's not the most detailed instructions, but it doesn't need to be. Head and arms go on the Marauder. Head, arms and weapons go on the ripper suits. After that we get a double page spread. So on one page we have our Enforcer. This is the new stat line breakdown you'll see in the main book. So it starts off with the faction orders for the Enforcer. So your 3 specific factions orders that you can use with your command dice. Underneath we have our stat lines. So the new stat line is, take one at random, type, so in this case a specialist. Speed, first is for a short move, the second is for a long sprint action, and that's in inches. Their shoot, so value on a D8. Their assault, again, value on a D8 for punching people. Their armor, that's the target number your opponent needs to damage your unit. Hit points or health, 2 in this case, 1 for most infantry. Their nerve, their height, that's important for terrain and cover. It uses an extrapolated height system, the same as Kings of War does. The base size and the unit strength for the unit. And then underneath it has options. So if you can do things like upgrade the Dominator rifle to missile launcher or assault weaponry, you'll get that, and any points cost required. Other side has the Orcs, everybody's favourite mercenaries. So Commando Captain, Marauder Commandos, Marauder Brawlers, Ripper Maulers, and Ripper Rainmakers. As you can guess, one of those is for punching and one of those is for shooting. There is a short beginner scenario to control the intel, and the last thing is a quick reference sheet, which is double-sided, and that you can always cut out and laminate when you're done, because it's probably handy to have anyway, along with your useful keywords. So that's a little getting started booklet. I really like that. They did something similar for Dead Zone. There are 2 sheets of tokens. Sheet number 1, as you can see here, these are activation tokens, so you can mark who's gone. Then we have a set of wound tokens. Hit the dirt, if people have been unnecessarily sprayed by large weaponry. Some broken, I thought these were bullets, but they're not, they're shattered shields. So broken markers, pinned markers, that's a fog screen or smoke screen. Not sure what those are. I'm sure the rules will tell me. They are double-sided with additional numbers and with a funky green fog. So sheet number 1 looks to be about 2mm card, so good decent card stock on it. Second one has another fog bank and also has objective markers. So these are 40mm round objectives, which is nice. Double-sided again. So if you're playing different point value objectives or primary and secondary objectives, you can know whose is whose on the tabletop. And again, decent card stock. And then we get to the meat and or potatoes of the thing. So we get 2 books, similar to Dead Zone, same size as Dead Zone. You have a core rulebook, which is the only thing you really need to bring with you when you're playing. The second book is the force list book. And the force lists, obviously you can make your lists out at home, write them down or print them out. I imagine they'll be on Easy Army. And then this can stay on your shelf so you're not carrying 2 books with you everywhere. So we'll have a quick look at the force lists, seeing as I'm here. There are 7 beginning forces in Firefight, obviously with room for expansion. Somebody comment, I want the rebs below, because that's all I've been hearing. When are the rebs coming? When are the rebs coming? I want the nameless. When are the rebs coming? But so far we have the Astrians, or Asterians, depending on how you feel. Enforcers, Forge Fathers, GCPS, Marauders, Plague, and Vermin. Each is laid out the same. So we get an example here of how you build your strike force. You must have a command. For every trip you take, you can take a command or specialist. And for any combination of 2, you can have a support. And it's that simple. So as you put together your force, just make sure you've got enough troops. The army lists all begin with a nice splash page. Here we see the Astrians, marionettes and puppets everywhere. Why go to war when you can get droids to do it for you? We learned that from the Trade Federation. And then after that you start with faction orders and then into the actual individual troop types. And we finish with a spread of some of the models that are available. So you can see the Kalishi, the Sumo Space Samurai, Matsudan. I really like the Astrians transports. It's really nice. Anyway, I digress. So the force lists are like that throughout. Every army gets a splash to begin with, a set of list building, and then finishes with some lovely model shots so you can see who is who. Simples, as the man says. Then we have our rulebook. So the rulebook is 104 pages, but that is not all rules. There's a good bit of narrative in here as well, and it's fairly easily broken down into how you play, how you set up for a scenario. The system itself is relatively simple. After you get past your annoying stuff like having to set your models up, you generate your command pool, you take alternate activations, and then you go into your end phase, see if anybody's claimed objectives, and do your tidy up. So break units if they need to be broken, that sort of thing. It's a kind of an interesting blend now of Dead Zone and Kings of War. If you play both, you'll pick this up in no time. If you play one, you've got a little bit of learning to pick up the other. But in the main, your line of sight, your movement, that sort of thing is based on your unit leader, which means you can move very quickly. You're essentially moving one model and then everybody else comes up and has to stay in coherency, and it's up to you where you put them, whether it's in front or behind. Other unit leaders can use your closest model for the target, so you can slingshot people forward if you want. They're just going to get shot in the face. Say terrain and height is abstract in the same way that it is in Kings of War. So if you've got level 3 building in front of you and you've got people who are height 2, they can't see over. If they're height 3, they can see over to something that's bigger. If they're height 4, then they can be seen and see over, but they'll get covered, things like that. Once you start playing through it, it's relatively quick to do. So I prefer it from true line of sight, which is never really true. It's always getting in the way. So we start with our rules, and after the rules, which I will just skip past here, we hit our missions. So your full rules are 46 pages. Well, it's probably not even that because you've got some pictures and stuff to take out. There's quite a lot of missions in this book. There are 8, as they describe them, battle missions. So each battle mission gives you the name of it, the terrain requirements if there are any specifics, deployment, game length, victory conditions, and then you get the deployment map at the bottom. Boosh. So like I say, 8 of those to begin with. And those are more balanced tournament lists, if you want to think of them like that. Then after that, we get into the narrative missions, which get a bit more love and attention. Each of them is not balanced for tournament play. They may be balanced enough for you and your friends, but they're more fun, and they are, as they say, narrative, so they'll have unusual special rules, like having unstable terrain or unusual beasts coming screaming out of the wilderness to eat people's faces, which I really like. So there's 8 more of those. So 16 missions in the core book. I imagine we'll see campaigns and stuff down the line, which will add things into that. And our last 40 pages is narrative. So some of this will be known to people if they've been playing Dead Zone, Warpath, and the like for a while. If this is totally new to you, this is a good primer for the universe in general, who the humans are, why they're terrible people, and who some of the other forces are in the galaxy. So you've got like the Marauders and the Mantic Rebellion, where they went from being the GCPS's whipping boys and mercs controlling everybody else to going, you know what, we can do this for ourselves, let's get gone. And so they did. Dead zones, plagues, and some of the older members of the galaxy. It's a really nice book, nice layout, some new artwork as well, as they really go to town on the Warpath universe. Somebody's about to come off worse in that fight, and I'm not sure who. Peacekeeper captain, probably. There we have it, that's the rulebook. Now, on to the fun stuff. Okay, so starting off with the enforcers, you get 4 of these sprues. So it makes 20 standard enforcers. They come with their wrist blades and rifles. So you get a bag with 2 sprues 4 times. As you can see, legs are lettered. So specific legs fit specific torsos. And they've got a slight ball socket on it. There's a bit of posability in that. Not as much as one would think. The models themselves are nicely detailed. The hard plastic brings out some interesting little bits. They're kind of like Iron Man. A whole army of Iron Men. But shockingly, I haven't seen anybody paint a whole army up like Iron Man yet. Give it time. The second sprue contains our heads, more wrist blades, your other arms. Not a huge amount of frippery on the sprue, so there are a couple of Gendling pistols, pouches. This pack is for the incinerator. We also have a burst laser and a few little combat knives and bits. That's actually a rank badge. See that little teeny tiny thing there, which goes on the torso, on the left breast, I suppose. Well, you can put it wherever you want, really. But there we have it. Fairly simple. I'll show you some built versions. So here we have the burst laser with backup pistol. Depending on the type of glue you're using, you may find attaching those ball socket legs to be a bit of a pain. I always glue one to the base. Once it's dry, I then work from there. So, but you can do it the other way. You can just glue the legs onto the torso and then glue it down once it's flush. So, burst cannon. And then here we have the incinerator. When you want to clean people out of buildings from behind hardcover. Like I say, nice sculpts, and miniatures themselves are well detailed without being overly fussy. And a couple of our standard troopers. I was going to say doing the Lord's own work, but they're not. They're doing the Council of Seven's own work. And we're all happier for it. If you've not come across these guys before, they are 35mm to eye level. Although he is wearing a visor, so I can't be entirely certain his eyes are behind there. And very svelte, almost. While they're large scale, they're very well proportioned, which I like. They've got a job to do, and they will do it. Next up, we get a set of peacekeepers. So these are enforcers in heavier armor. In the backstory, the Council of Seven went to war against the Forge Fathers, so space dwarves, and discovered that the Forge Fathers are actually very, very hard with really good technology and weaponry, and they got their heads handed to them. So they went back with a big bag of cash and went, "Can you make us some armor?" And this is where the enforcers get their togs from. So built bulkier. Again, similar setup. Torsos with legs. These are not ball socket though. You might be able to see there, they're very flattened, or in some cases you'll have a slight ball on it. Again, lettered for specific ones. I would not try and mix and match them if you are not a modeler, for you will run into trouble that way. More wrist blades and energy gauntlets and some big defensive shields. Shields are quite nice because they've got the forearm attached, which means with a bit of pushing and shoving, you can actually equip your enforcers with them as well, which is an option in Dead Zone. Haven't seen if it's an option in this yet. I've not read through the full book yet. Second sprue, again, similar. Torsos, a variety of rifles, incinerators, burst lasers, and heads. As you can see, the shield arms are 2 parts, so this is just shoulder and upper arm, because the forearm's on the back of the shield. And then we have the helmets, including one guy who's got his visor up, who's probably the leader, because visors restrict viewing, maybe? I don't know. Leaders always have their helmets up or off. Maybe they just like to live dangerously. And again, I've got some built. We'll start with a couple of our heavy hitters. That's how you breach into somewhere that's full of terrible people. You bring a shield with you. Again, nice level of detail, fairly clean, not much in the way of clean up to do on them. Those leg joints are a fiddly pain though. You'll enjoy those, or you won't. That's my first 2. Then I have an incinerator. Again, there's the fuel pack on the back. I assume that's a nozzle that somebody can come up to and plug them in and refill them. Yeah, no need to take it off. Again, quite punchy, quite beefy. More sort of hard sci-fi. And one of my favourites, doing a little room clearing, corridor by corridor. So while these are big, burly, well-armoured things, they're not clunky. It's like the old thing about knights, you know, they could move around and jump about quite easily. They weren't left like a turtle if they fell over. Same sort of thing here with the Enforcer Peacekeeper armour. They are more than capable of staying upright. I will say you get 40mm MDF bases that are wood in the box. I had these plastic ones kicking around, so I use them. The last thing is a little bag. So this is the 2 speeders, which are hard plastic, but they've already been de-sprued and bagged. I'm not going to empty this out because it will go everywhere. But you get all the pieces in there, including the flying stands for 2. The only thing of note, there we go, we will be able to see it. There's quite a large bit of sprue there, which is on the inside of the bike half. That needs to be clipped off right down to the nub. That's just dead material. However, when you're done, you get these very sleek speeder looking things, which I'm 100% on board with. I really love the look of this. It's like a shark coming at you. Now, there's a weapon that goes in there. There's actually 3 weapon options you get. Missile, laser, and rifle. And they all have that square peg. They don't, well, they can work friction fit. I'm actually going to put a magnet in there so I can swap between them. But it's a beautiful model. And if you like those, they also do a see-through variant on the web store for stealth. It's all, including the bloke, is in clear, colourless, hard plastic. But yeah, it's a lovely bit of kit. So 2 of those zipping around, causing all your opponents to have a bad day. So that is the Enforcer side. Then we have the Marauder side. Ba-bum. So the Marauders, 2 sprues per bag. 1 sprue mostly bodies and 1 sprue mostly arms. They are in a similar vein to the more recent Kings of War releases. A sprue, we'll count the pair as a single sprue, allows you to make 10. You have got 5 pairs of bodies, and then you'll have pairs of arms as well, in the main, along with a few separate ones. So as you can see up here, we have rifle E, and then rifle something else. Oh, that one doesn't have a number. If they're numbered, or lettered rather, then they have to go together. If they don't, then they will stand alone, rise or fall. We've got our pistols, a bionic or replacement claw. We've got the energy claws. We've got somebody with a sickle mag, ready to slam it in. And then a massive, massive meaty axe. The bodies themselves, 1-piece torso and legs, absolutely covered in ammo and grenades. The Marauders really are the best mercenaries in the galaxy, and they like to fight and get paid well for doing it, all wearing sort of combat fatigues and webbing with as much ammo on them as they can manage. Second sprue. So again, we have the rest of our arms and weapons. We have another incinerator, a missile launcher here as well. Up at the top here, we have broken claw, a large, can't remember the name of it. It's a large machine gun. We'll get away with that one. A large machine gun, which actually has this belt fed, goes into it. And then we have our heads up the top. So 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 15 heads for 10 torsos. Gives you a fair bit of variation in there to make your Commandos. And again, I have some built. We'll start with our more shooty. So the standard Marauder Commandos. You're not one, you're a mauler. You'd gone to the back. So, a little more cleanup on these than on the Enforcers. They've a couple of noticeable seam lines from the where the sprue sits. Nice, simple orc in military gear. Because the heads are all square on the sprue, you will find a slight seam line in there, running down the nose. But they look quite nice nonetheless. You can see that seam line there on the inside of the foot. Now, there's a few running poses like this one, and because of the sprue design, so they're sitting like that, then the detail's been flattened off somewhat on the sides to get them to actually come out of the molds. You can see that on a couple of the bodies where you get sort of a flattening or a stretching of the model back. It's not a major issue. I don't really mind because I dislike having to spend forever building models. So if there happens to be a bit of loss of detail around the heels and the boots, but I don't have to put a torso onto a leg, then I will live with that. This guy's smoking a big cigar. We also have our incinerator here with mask on. Very important. So a nice set of figures. And overall, very, very good models. Should clean up quickly. Like I say, just that sort of stretching on the running foot. Size-wise, for these guys, they are 28mm to eye level, or about 30 to 32mm to the top of their head / hunch, because they're very forward, very, very bulky. If I bring one of our enforcers in here, you'll see he's a robust fella, all muscle, like a slab of meat coming at you. Then we have our maulers. So again, same torsos, so you'll see the same sort of thing on some of the running legs, but for a set of Space Orc models, you get these guys on the tabletop in double quick fashion. And don't worry, when the 40 Marauders in the box are all built, your opponent will still be putting legs on those enforcers. Bit of seam lines on the middle of the faces because I've done minimal cleanup just to get them together. But I do like the look of them. I like the fact they're in fatigues. It's a nice look for them. And you can see the sort of, I suppose, GCPS influence from when they were being forced around the galaxy to fight other people's wars. They're much happier now fighting their own wars. So a bit of posability with the arms and the head to give you a more unique posing or dynamic posing, but you don't really have to fuss around with them too much. The last thing in the box are the dice. So this game works on D8. You get 16, which is nice, or at least I got 16. I don't know if it specifically says 16 or if I just got double bagged and was lucky. And then the command dice. So these, if you've played Vanguard, the fantasy skirmish game, these will be familiar. They use the same system but different colors, which means you can use Vanguard command dice as well. So the black are the more prevalent. They've got more blank faces on them. Every sword is a point. So you roll these at the start of the turn, and then that's how many command points you have throughout your turn to do extra things like double activation, issuing some of those faction-specific commands, that sort of thing. But there we have it. That is Firefight. Actually, that's not it. I almost forgot the Ripper suits. So the Rippers are PVC plastic and come in a bag like this. So you get 2 bags. Each bag has a pair of Ripper suits with options that you can use to make some variations. So there's 3 heads for 2 bodies, and then there's a couple of additional close combat blades and a set amount of ranged weapons. So really you're making 1 Ripper, Rainmaker, and then 1 Mauler per. These will require you to break out the super glue, and they are PVC plastic. So this is not a substance people like to work with often. I don't find it too bad. It's just a softer plastic than hard plastic. So you may find some parts are slightly warped or deformed because it's thermoplastic, which means this foot, for example, should be a bit more square. I could have heated the model up and that would have bent it back, either under the hot tap or with a hairdryer. I didn't actually mind because it looks like he's lifting his foot and walking slightly. So I just went with it. You do get things like a double belt, so you get a short and a long, because you get 4 arms, 2 essentially 90-degree angle, 1 for each side, and then 2 that are extended, 1 for each side, which means this gun can go onto either arm in either position, in which case you might change where the belt feed goes from, because guns fit all. But as you can see, they are aggressively bigger, I think is the way to go with that one, than your standard Marauder. I quite like these. These are some sort of high energy pneumatic ram in a Hulkbuster style of thing, except years before the Hulkbuster suit attempted to put Hulk back to sleep. I just like the idea of him repeatedly punching a Peacekeeper captain in the face with it. It's good, and more Peacekeeper captains should be punched repeatedly in the face. So they're big, hefty 40mm bases, and most of that base is filled, and there's a good chunk of weight to them. Nice detailing on them. You will find some seam lines will need to be cleaned up. PVC plastic has a tendency to burr, so when you're cleaning it, use a sharp knife rather than a file, and then just go down and carve them off. So you might see one comes across the knee and down the side of the shin there. But again, plenty of detail on them, and chunky. These are 38 mil to eye level. So a extravagant pair, and you'll end up with two long range and 2 close combat in the box set. There you have, that's all of the Marauders then. Okay, so there we have it. New edition. Fairly major overhaul of the rules, has to be said. If people haven't played Firefight before, this is great. Tear straight into this. If you have played Firefight before, this is very different. This isn't your daddy's Firefight, as they might say in the southern states. Different feel to it. It plays much faster, it's much cleaner, and it has a lot of shared DNA, shall we say, between the likes of Kings of War and Dead Zone. If you've picked up Dead Zone recently and that's your first experience with Mantic, this is a great step up. A lot of your Dead Zone miniatures can be used as specialist support or even units here in Firefight. If you're thinking about going the other way, you can get Firefight, play some of the bigger games, and then drill down into Dead Zone, which means you can put together little campaigns as well. Interesting stuff. Nice range of miniatures in the box. Some are fiddly. Some require a little bit of cleanup and love and attention, but overall, at the price point, you can't really complain. That box is stuffed filled, and it has a very solid start to 2 forces in it. A lot of times, you tend to get skimped on in 2-player starter sets, and you end up having to buy 2 or 3 times the amount that you have to actually make a fieldable army right off the bat. These are good, solid cores, and maybe only 1 or 2 purchases will get you to a standard game size, which is both unusual and excellent. If you are already a Firefight player, if you're a veteran from the first edition, or you've enough stuff kicking around from Dead Zone, the rulebook, sourcebook, and tokens are bundled together. You can get those separately, and if you need to get the dice, you can get those as well. So you don't need to get the 2-player starter set if you already have the miniatures. But if you're brand new and looking for a punt in there, the new Marauders are lovely, really nice, chunky, brutal looking orcs to rampage around the tabletop. Let me know what you think below, folks. I'm going to go on and build some more enforcers and curse at their legs. But until next time, bye-bye.
Go ahead and check out our other content on screen now. And while you're at it, why not hit subscribe and remember to ding our dong. Go on, you know you want to click it. Go on.